All right, hey everybody. Here we are, it's Making Star Wars show. We are starting 2 minutes late. I was all the way back there, and then my internet started not working from there. And I guess there was some pixelation yesterday, so I didn't really realize that. So I came over here near the doghouse, and today I got Ben Maynard with me. He's gonna talk Star Wars. And how's it going, dude?
Great, great. Just an amazing day for Star Wars, especially with this new Bad Batch episode, and then us getting droids on Disney Plus. It's quite the day.
Is Droids on Disney Plus right now?
Uh, I haven't looked physically myself,
Yeah.
but like all the different like major media places have posted like droids just got added today. Blah blah
Okay.
blah. Star Wars is official. Star Wars is the only Twitter that hasn't posted about it, but other bigger accounts have posted like, Droids is out on Disney Plus today, blah blah blah. So,
Yeah, I
I
know it was
mean,
announced. I know it was announced
yeah.
a little while ago. Oh yeah, and what shows are you on? Want to plug your
Um,
show?
oh yeah. Well, every Friday night, me and a couple of my friends, we host a show called the Outer Rim Transmission, and it's a live Star Wars talk show. Real positive. We review, talk about like the weekly Star Wars news. I mean, some of it, we review some of your news that you post, Jason, and then we just have a good time about it. Talk for hour and a half, 2 hours, and then after the show's over, it's posted to every podcasting platform on Mondays. So, you can have it for the start to your work week.
Nice. Yeah, that's I think the best part about podcasting is when you have a group of people and they kind of click, and it's might not be for you, but when you find the one where that group clicks and it's for you, it's the best thing ever. It's like while you're working, while you're doing anything like that, it's like you're hanging out with your Star Wars pals while you're living your mundane life. That's what I like about podcasting and this kind of jazz the most.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
for sure. Podcasting is like it's definitely the way the future for content and things like that. Just because it's so convenient, like you said, you can throw it on in the background. Where when you're at work or the gym or wherever, and it's a really great way to just get your day started or end it or however you want to consume your podcast.
so to flip back to what you were hitting on, are you going to watch Droids? Are you like going like right in on it, or you just kind of
Um,
what is your Droids plan?
Well, my specific plan is I'm gonna end up watching it. I actually have the tapes, the VHS tapes,
Right.
from the old series that released, however many years ago it was. I mean, I'm only 27, but when I was younger, we had all the VHS tapes for everything for Droids, for obviously the original trilogy, the prequels, all that stuff. And I remember watching those as a kid, but I haven't watched them in probably 20 years.
Right.
So I'm gonna watch them probably over the weekend just to get a refresher, and I'm sure we'll talk about it like next week or something.
Right. Yeah, I want to say I was probably 5 or 6 years old. It was like droids and Ewoks, and a show I want to say was called, it wasn't Munchies, it was Littles or something like that. These little people who lived in the wall, and that was my Saturday morning. And I was just like, I couldn't believe we got Star Wars on TV. Which, if I had known what was coming as a little kid, it would have blown my mind. But I watched all of those, and I loved them. And then when I was like a teenager, probably 16 or so, I remember going down to like Hollywood Video, and the VHS tapes came out. I rented them, and I was like a little bit like, wow, I sort of love this and I sort of hate this at the same time, because it was just such a weird, it's like you're just thirsty for more Star Wars at that point, and it's just so like
Yeah.
a hit or a miss and kind of strange. But strangely, I feel
Well,
like the toys were bigger than the TV show itself.
oh yeah. Well, I remember specifically, like I said, the last time I saw these droid shows, I was probably
Mhm.
7 or 8 years old, and I remember specifically saying to my grandparents at the time, I was like, why don't these shows look like the actual Star Wars movies? Because I didn't understand at the time as a kid, like the difference between animation or live action. And I was like, man, what's up with these? Why do they look so weird? um, but yeah, I mean, Star Wars is it's a good time. Like my thing with Star Wars is, sure, we have some moments or pieces of content or things that could be cheesy. I mean, look at the holiday special, for example. But I feel like it's all, good in its own way, just because, like, I always tell my best friend this, like, you have to be able to like laugh at the things you love and stuff. And Star Wars is something like, I love it. So, I can laugh at it. I can take jokes about it. Like, it's fun. It's a good time. Like, don't get worked up. And Star Wars, I just love some of the cheesiness in it. Like, I mean, you'll see me tweet like the Salacious Crumb gif here and there because that character is a hilarious little character in Return of the Jedi. And it's just a funny little alien. And, like, I just think it's such a good universe to have a really good time with and not like be so like, serious. Like we have to be stoic when we talk about it.
Right. Yeah. It's not religion. It's fun. And that's where I fall. And I'm a hypocrite. There's been times when I've taken it way too seriously. I mean, I think if you love something long enough, you will make that mistake, so I'm not going to cast the first stone on that one, but you're completely right. It is like there's been times when I've had to like pinch myself, catch myself, be like, you know what, this is popcorn, and you like popcorn, enjoy it, and don't expect popcorn to be a steak. It would be great when you get a steak every now and then, but it's popcorn. And if it ever got too serious in the wrong way, as see, I hate to say it because, like, for instance, wouldn't it be cool to see what Christopher Nolan would do with Star Wars? It would be cool.
That's my number one thing is I would love to have Christopher Nolan be directing and creating a Star Wars movie. But my thing with him is I feel like I don't know how people would receive it because Christopher Nolan, he pretty much takes creative liberty with all of his movies.
Sure.
So it would be really interesting to see his take on Star Wars because it could be dark, it could be gritty, it could be mystical, anything. Right. Like he's an amazing director, and it would be interesting just to see his take because look at Dunkirk, for example. That movie, I had a really good time with that movie. Just imagine that being like in Star Wars. I think something like that could be a lot of fun. Like, Christopher Nolan could really hit the nail on the head for like the war part of Star Wars. And I think he would be really fun with it, but it would be interesting because I don't think we would have a lot of like silly stuff in his movie though.
Right. Yeah. You're totally dead on, I would think, unless he was like, this is my chance to lean into and do something I've always wanted to do that I can't do in Dunkirk. But it's like, it reminds me of when I was probably about 20 and we were in a practice studio outside of Hollywood, and I'm hanging out with a bunch of punks and we have the radio on and like a Madonna song came on and I'm like, yeah, I don't hate it. And they're just like, and then a Britney Spears song came on. And then they went further into it, and I was like, guys, like, honestly, Britney's not trying to do what Jello Biafra's trying to do here. We don't have to judge her by the standards of somebody else's art or what they're aiming for. And like when it comes to this genre specific kind of stuff, unless they say we're trying to mix these genres, and they're doing it poorly, it's kind of silly when people get a little too serious about that side of things. But
oh yeah, 100%.
Droid. But so Ewoks came out like a couple weeks ago, and number one, I love that Ewok song. That Ewok song, that's a banger, as the kids would say. And I whenever we're on Disney Plus and we can't find what to watch for the kids, I always put it on and sing it in my kids' faces because they have it coming. And I try to get them into it, and they've been raised on Clone Wars, Rebels, and now Bad Batch, and they're just like, what is this nonsense? You know what I mean?
Yep.
It doesn't work for them, which I was kind of surprised because I thought that was my in. For years, I thought those two little punks were my in. Nope. They're much more serious about it than I am at this point.
Oh
But
yeah. Well, speaking of Clone Wars, one thing if you haven't introduced your kids to it already is the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, the anime series that's on Disney Plus. That series is phenomenal. Like, like I said, I'm always on our Outer Rim transmission show. I'm always bringing that up because that is such a well made Star Wars story. Because I mean, I remember as a kid, week to week, Cartoon Network would have that show on from like 8:55 to 9 o'clock at night on Friday nights. Like, we were getting hyped up for one 5-minute episode on a Friday night. Like, just imagine nowadays, what if Star Wars came out and said, hey, we're going to release Mando in like 30 total episodes in 5-minute increments. People would go crazy.
Right.
But, back then you were allowed to get away with even animated shows being 5 minutes because that was just the standard back, in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it was ostensibly an Attack of the Clones Revenge of the Sith promotional show. Just to tell kids these movies are coming, go and see them. And what I always liked about the Genndy show itself is that it's the combination of the superhero genre of cartoons and Star Wars. And it's like the only time you really get that, maybe until Bad Batch at moments. Like Bad Batch plays with it, I think. Like Wrecker is is he in the Star Wars universe or is he in a superhero universe? Kind of like he's kind of in that spot with superhuman strength and he's like the comedic relief. So yeah, so just to kind of move it into that point, and hey, Dale showed up. What did you think of last night's episode?
I thought it was phenomenal. In my opinion, I mean, of course, this is just day one, so obviously opinions can change. But as of right now, I think it is the best episode so far of the Bad Batch show specifically, because you really progress the story forward more. Obviously, with the whole storyline with the Empire coming in finally, obviously the big reveal at the end, and just all of the action in this, the character development. Like I've said it the entire time on our reaction shows on Fridays, I think Omega is my favorite character because I've loved to see her character arc from, this curious kid to now she's basically getting trained by mercenaries or deserters to be basically a soldier. And she's, however old, 12, 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
So it's really intriguing to see how they're playing her character, because her character, I've been talking about this for weeks. Her character has been such a good entryway into the Star Wars universe for people who potentially may have not been into Star Wars, or younger kids or things like that. Like, obviously, as I said, I've been a fan of Star Wars forever, but for younger kids or people who may not be interested or, maybe just getting into the shows, Omega is a really neat character, because I think it was in like the second or third episode, she was asking the crew, like, oh, can we go and explore the planet? And, when she gets outside and like smells the fresh air, like all of that sort of stuff is like the entryway. That is like the new Star Wars fan getting to explore the Star Wars universe. And, it's really made her character so likable, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's every new series almost has to treat itself in that way to an extent, or it runs the risk of not only turning off people who kind of know things but don't know enough, but also you're gonna have some little kid or maybe even an adult, who knows, but who's like, what is this? I'm just gonna put this on, and then kind of gets hooked in through there. I liked last night what they did with Omega, which was they had her on one hand kind of getting made a fool of by Wrecker with that smoke bomb test. They were testing her, but then on the other hand, and she fails the test but learns a lesson, right? But then as the episode goes on, if you notice, she gets that light bow and she starts using it like effectively. And
Yep.
so you have an on-screen progression of growth in terms of becoming a warrior. And it's
Oh,
pretty,
yeah.
it's done well and it's done clearly. And we don't always need that. That's not always the most important thing. Like as we hit yesterday, you know, people go, how did Ray do this? How did Ray do that? And you got the Force. But if Omega's
Yep.
not a Force person and she's just some clone kid who's basically human when you get down to it, you run into this thing where, okay, so we're gonna have to see her become a warrior, and I think they're doing a good job of it. It's a little checkboxy. I wonder if it's reactionary, but I didn't hate how it was handled.
Oh yeah, for sure. I agree. That's another point I was going to make as well. I really like to watch her training, go from this innocent kid to this warrior. And on a side note, I really think, I mean, we can get into like theories or speculation later in the show, but I think she's going to end up potentially being either a little bit force sensitive or something, just based on some of her interactions. Like, earlier in the season, she said to Crosshair, like, I know I know it's not you or whatever. And then how she talked to the big character at the end of this episode. Like, I think there's a chance she's going to be a little bit force sensitive. Just like, what's his name in Rogue One? The blind guy. Yeah, Chirrut. I think she's going to be kind of like Chirrut, like maybe a little bit force sensitive where she can kind of feel stuff, but it's not like full blown like Luke or Rey or Anakin or whoever. Like, I think there's a decent chance she's going to maybe be a little bit sensitive.
Yeah, no, that's kind of been my take. And on one hand, if there was a casino in Vegas that was just about betting on Star Wars stuff, you could almost bet that you're gonna have a force sensitive main hero.
Yeah.
And I was talking about it yesterday. Like the idea has always been that clones aren't supposed to be able to use the Force and procreate, but I don't know if procreation's important here, but they're supposed to be altered to such an extent that they age faster and stuff. I have to assume that's not the case with Omega. The only kind of like weird thing about her where I go, well, okay, is she like actually like an altered clone, or did they just use Django DNA and let nature take its course and how it fertilized the egg kind of situation? Like, I don't know how that works in Star Wars, but was she just female instead of male, and they went with it? But then she has that blonde hair. And well, I don't think she got that from Django. So,
yeah.
So there's definitely something going on there. And I think if we just look at it in terms of production, if Dave Filoni sort of kicked this show off, it's created by him, and he's in The Mandalorian, and you have little Grogu who has this the secret science background with cloners. And then we have this little girl who has a secret science background with cloners. It's kind of hard to not go, these things don't meet up somewhere, that they're not part of the same plot thread, if you will. And how that washes out, I think, is if it is accurate is the question. Because on one hand, like I was saying, like she looks just like the concept art of Luke Skywalker when Luke was a girl, and Ralph McQuarrie did that, and it's clearly pulling from that. So I just kind of got this vibe that it's going to go in that direction. But I guess you'll always have somebody who says it doesn't have to go that way. She doesn't have, and that is completely true too. And it could be a red herring.
Oh, it could 100% be a red herring. But like you said, if you're going to Vegas and betting on Star Wars related things, like that's something you could bet on. Her having the Force, like those type of things, you could bet quite a bit of money on, and you probably won't lose most of the time, when it comes to this franchise, and it's not to say, and I'm not saying that in a critical way either, because obviously it's worked to an extent. Like, we've had all these main characters with the Force, and it's never been an issue. I just think it all comes down to execution is really how they do it. And, as you said, I think there's a really good chance that as long as Omega continues to go on the path that we're talking about, I think there's a really good chance that her and Grogu meet up at some point.
Right.
And it'll have to be live action, I feel like, because something me and the guys always talk about on the podcast is when it comes to this series and Disney Plus in general, as well as like Mando and all the other potential shows, they can introduce these characters in live action or introduce them in animation first and then bring them into live action, because then it gives you kind of like crossover. So now if someone's watching Mando season 4 or 3 or 5 or whatever it may be in the future, and you have this character named Omega pop up and she's in her 20s or 30s, and people are like, who's that? And Star Wars can be like, hey, she was in an entire season of a show back a few years ago. Go check it out. So it gives the Bad Batch, rewatchability.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes all of this stuff flow into itself in a certain way. And also, like, I don't really know what the demo is on that show, but I'm going to guess it's really like Clone Wars, and it's probably like 14-year-olds. It's probably like
Yep.
what they're aiming for. And look at how that's paying off right now with Clone Wars. I mean, that was 2008. We're about a little over 10 years out of Clone Wars now. And or a little more than 10 years now, but not since it ended. And with all of that in mind, we end up in this place where those kids are now old enough where they're like, I want this Ahsoka live action show, and they're getting it. I mean, I would like to think that was because of us, but I don't think so. I think it's that Clone Wars generation who made that happen. That's who they are selling that to, and they're selling it to everybody. But I think that's the generation who embraced it the most. And
for sure.
That's the same kind of thing. Is she could be the next Ahsoka. And I will say, like, as Bad Batch has started, if you start Clone Wars and forget everything you knew and just watch the Clone Wars movie, Omega has a much cleaner start than Ahsoka ever did. Like right now, the quality and the character execution way better. So, and I will say, like, to his credit, you can see that Dave Filoni's grown a lot as a storyteller, and it's paying off now, and that's good, because wouldn't it be terrible if we were stuck with Dave Filoni and he just kind of stayed right at what was that first episode called, the castle of terror, something
like that.
Castle of Doom, I don't know.
Yep.
But yeah, and obviously he was having to deal with George Lucas as kind of like, what do you want me to do? Okay, I'm gonna go execute your Order 66 on this stuff all the time. And now he's probably really answering to himself a lot more in that regard creatively, and it's been good. Bad Batch itself, I will say too, I put on the Clone Wars last night because I let my son stay up and watched it with me, Bad Batch. And when the cameo that we're going to talk about came, there were certain episodes he hadn't seen or that he didn't remember seeing. I'm pretty sure he's seen them all, but he didn't remember it. So we went and we put some of them on, and I was like, wow, Bad Batch looks really good. Like, Clone Wars didn't look like awful, but like a season 2 Clone Wars episode does not hold a candle to where Bad Batch is at right now. And that makes me happy, because love or hate Rebels, I did not love its design. I didn't love how it looked a lot of the times. A lot of the environments felt very flat and blank.
I definitely agree with you on that. Like, when it comes to Rebels, I love the show. Actually, it may be a controversial opinion, but I think Rebels as a whole is potentially better than Clone Wars is as a whole. Like, I feel like Clone Wars has a more even tone. Like, say if you like rate the series, I would say Clone Wars, for the most part, no matter what episode you're on, it'll be about an 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10. It'll be pretty good. But I feel like with Rebels, you have a lot more high moments that are closer to like 10 out of 10, but you also have some really low moments that are like a 2 out of 10. So, I really enjoyed Rebels for that, for what it was, because I feel like a lot of their higher moments outweighed a lot of the lower moments that were in the show. But like you said, I just feel like the animation, something about the animation for Rebels felt a little weird. But that show was really good. Clone Wars, I rewatched Clone Wars a few months ago with some of my cousins, and we noticed the same thing from the newer Clone Wars series to the the originals, like seasons 1, 2, 3. There's definitely an animation difference for sure.
Yeah, Bad Batch lost the Thunderbirds Argo painted look. The final season of Clone Wars did as well, and they were kind of toning that down as it went on. It got a little bit more balanced. I always wondered if that making the characters wooden painted puppets was like George Lucas's middle finger to people who said that the prequels were wooden.
Yeah.
Like, was that him going, oh, you think so? Okay, I'm gonna make that look great.
Well, see,
wood look great.
That's the thing with George. Like, there was the picture I saw circulating the internet a few months ago. It was while Attack of the Clones was filming. It was a picture of George where he had like the quote from like the New York Times on it or whatever, talking badly about the Phantom Menace. And a lot of people always viewed George as like, he didn't really care what a lot of people thought and stuff. But then, he's wearing a shirt with a quote that's criticizing his movie. So it's like he definitely cared.
Yeah, I think criticism in that way, I think it hurts. I think you do immediately kind of get kicked. And then I think the middle finger comes out after. And then there also comes a point like where with Star Wars where he was just like, I'm so deep into what I've started, I can't course correct without crashing it. So what am I gonna do? Screw it. And I think that's where he was coming from. I mean, like, even when you look at Willow, I mean, General Kill is based off of Pauline Kael, the very, very classic, famous, film critic. And the Ebor Sisk is Siskel and Ebert, the two-headed dragon. It's kind of lighthearted and it's kind of funny at the same time. You kind of wonder, like, somebody was, I think, a little bit psychically wounded by some of this stuff at one point. But yeah, but anyways, to bring it back in, so let's just get to the cameo part, because that's what my brain can't let go of, because that was the big, oh man. So what was your reaction when the old blue fella showed up? And by the way, really quickly, I should have said that before, but I'm assuming everybody has watched The Bad Batch by this point. So if you haven't, you're gonna get spoiled on the big point of the episode, or the big moment. So you've been warned. Yeah.
Well, he means the blue fellow as in Thrawn. No, we're kidding. I was totally stunned. Seeing Cad Bane back, I was stunned, just because I've seen other like Star Wars insider reporters tweeting like, oh, be ready for Friday's episode, blah, 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 and things like that. And then you even kind of hinted at potentially like something in this episode. And I was like, man, what is going to happen? And then at the beginning of the episode, when the Kaminoans mention, we have bounty hunters on this, it made me wonder. I didn't even think about Cad Bane at first, because I was thinking, we already had Fennec Shan. So I was thinking they're just going to do the Boba Fett connection, basically to like shoehorn in your connection to the Book of Boba, like have Fennec Shan and Boba like kind of competing when Boba was younger. So I was thinking, who knows, is this going to be Boba Fett, like young Boba Fett? Like, I would love to see, on a side note, I would love to see young Boba Fett in some kind of like beat up Django armor that he hasn't painted green yet or anything. But I was thinking it was going to be Boba. And then when Cad Bane comes out, I was like, holy smokes. I was just stunned, because he was one of my favorite characters in Clone Wars. Like, I always loved the idea of basically an alien cowboy. I mean, that's literally what he has. And just to see how skilled he was at, basically taking out Hunter, like up to this point in the series, we've all known Hunter to be so quick at reacting and anticipating and things like that. And Cad Bane still gets the jump on him with his shot. So just seeing that and seeing how skilled Cad Bane still is just brought a big smile to my face at 4 o'clock this morning watching the episode.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody about 2 months ago, somewhere around there, and I asked if Boba Fett was going to be in the show, and they said no, Cad Bane, and I was like, really? And then I just kind of nice, and then went about my life. And knowing that he was going to be in the show, it still surprised me when it happened last night. I just kind of didn't connect it, and then it happened. I was like, oh, there he is. I will say, this is just me being a poopy pants. Going to be critical about one thing. His old hat was better. I like that old bigger hat. That old bigger hat was a little bit cooler, but he did look good though. He looked really, really cool. And it was sort of that season 2, episode 1, I think, episode of Clone Wars kind of introduction again, we're just sitting there with the toothpick, just being a jerk. And he brought Toto 360 with him. They're still hanging out, which is Seth Green, I think. I think that's Seth Green's character.
I think so as well.
And season 1.5, War of the Bounty Hunters. Yeah, that's right, Dale. And I didn't think that was going to work as well for me as it did, because that's already happened. Like that intro has already happened, but I guess it just shows that some things are kind of timeless in a way. And I really liked it because the previous episode, when Rex came back, it was cool, but it didn't do anything for me. It didn't. I wasn't like, oh my God, it's Captain Rex. It's like, we kind of we had this happen before now. So it's like, okay. But the Cad Bane one, he's just been kind of so off the landscape of Star Wars for a while now. And we didn't know if they were going to follow through on the concept that Boba Fett was going to kill him. And maybe that's still in the cards, as the series goes on, or even in Book of Boba Fett or something like that. But
well, see, my thoughts on that, I really feel like they reworked the whatever the leaked scene or whatever. I'm not sure if that's even officially on Star Wars, anything Star Wars, but everyone's probably seen it by now, the scene between Cad Bane and Boba Fett shooting each other.
Yeah.
That, I feel like they reworked that scene specifically for this scene with him and Hunter. Like, I think that's literally what the template was for this scene. And I think we may see something totally different. If Cad Bane would appear in the Book of Boba, I'm not sure if they'll redo that again, just because, we literally just had it now with Hunter today.
Right. Yeah, it would be, if he is in Book of Boba, that would be a good way to set him up, though, to like remind people, hey, he's here, he's alive, and so when he shows up there. But yeah, I don't want Cad Bane to die.
No.
In fact, I almost think it would be kind of rad if we caught up with old Cad Bane and they did like an Unforgiven kind of thing with them. You know what I mean? What happens to the gunslinger after retirement? It's never good. It's never it's not really a good life, in those stories. And so it wouldn't atone for the evil that he's done, but it would also give the moral lesson of, if you pick fights and you go into fights, like, you don't really end up too well in the end. That's kind of the simplistic, I guess, lesson of the cowboy who lives anyways. You will oftentimes kill them. You either kill them or you let them live to be sad and pathetic, kind of. But
see, and I don't know if Cad will go down. I think if whatever happens with this character, I think he's going to be going down swinging. Just because I don't see him, if he would end up fighting Boba, for example. Like, I mean, of course, Boba has to live because it's Boba's show. But I don't know if Cad would just walk away taking a loss. Like, I'm not sure if he would do that, but it just all depends on the story. Like, the Book of Boba Fett, are we going to be getting is Boba going to be ruling like the crime, like the underground of the criminal world, just because like the symbolism and imagery we got from that little teaser at the end of Mando season 2, you know, because I took that trailer as like basically Boba, him sitting on Jabba's throne is basically like him saying, "Hey, I'm the new crime boss," basically. So it just makes me wonder how they would put Cad Bane into that, just because presumably, if Cad Bane survives the Bad Batch, but presumably he would still be a bounty hunter because that's only however many years later, So I don't know. It just matters how they execute it is really my number one concern with that.
Sure. Yeah, I would have to think that Cad Bane would probably be more valuable to Lucasfilm alive and existing. And he is one of the few characters who I think feels and looks as vicious as somebody like Darth Maul, but is in a completely different element to that, you know. And they did bring Darth Maul into the criminal underworld, so you have that, I guess. But Cad Bane, there's something mystical about him. He's just vicious, and he was so successful in the Clone Wars. I don't think that they ever had a bad episode with him, and now in Bad Batch there hasn't been a bad episode. And I was making fun of that hat. My hope, though, is that smaller hat is because in live action you can't put that big giant hat on him in live action, and maybe not make it look goofy, and maybe not make it flop in the wind if he had to do action or run, and if he's CGI to some extent at times it would probably look weird.
Oh
So
yeah, I think there's a chance that could be definitely be in play. I mean, look how they did with Ahsoka's like head tails. I mean, they had to shorten them up a little bit just because of Rosario's acting and stuff. You can't. It's hard to work, as an actor with like kind of floppy props like that.
yeah, exactly, floppy props. The Ahsoka Tano story.
Yep.
Yeah. So the actual gunfight duel done really well too. I mean, and I was a little bit like as it started, I thought to myself, I was like, when was the last time we've seen one of these, you know? And then it was like, well, Solo: A Star Wars Story had one. And so they haven't like overdone that kind of gunfighter like duel. And Mando kind of goes into it, but it wasn't exactly like how that one was. That one really felt like the real old throwback, like in the street kind of style. And yeah, so I hope he survives, and I hope he continues on through this. And somebody in chat, I saw it in my peripheral vision, mentioned about Boba being a clone. Oh, I think was it Dale? I just figured it out. The Kaminoans hired a bunch of bounty hunters. Boba realizes this is a young clone, much like himself, from Camino. Boba is going to show up when Cad Bane stops for fuel. That would be cool. I mean, it would be cool if Boba did show up. I mean, I also, though, at the same time, wonder how how did Boba come out of the Clone Wars after hanging out with his quote brothers? He seemed like, on one hand, like I haven't watched those episodes in quite a while, but it seemed like he was a little bit like he had a little bit of a superiority complex compared to them being unaltered, but then he also seemed to kind of work with them at the same time. So,
Well, I know in the I believe it's the Jango Fett comic that's canon.
Yeah.
I know Jango viewed the clones as basically nothing. Like he basically viewed them as like a payday. Like, hey, you can use my DNA, make the clones, and I don't really care what happens to them. So it makes me wonder if potentially, Boba, like being experienced or just kind of getting that vibe from his dad, would he have that similar feel? Or, on the other hand, maybe he saw what they were doing, things like that, could have potentially respected them for, the action they've been in and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it is like on the Django side, there's a bit like I'm the real deal and you're the copy. There's a bit of like narcissism at play in that way. But then on the Boba Fett side, you have this person who you've lost and they'll look just like him. That's got to be weird too. Like when he, meeting, like if he met the adult clones, they're going to remind him of his father. And that's also, I don't know. I don't know what the emotional reaction to that is, because you could take it a lot of different ways. But
Oh yeah, for sure. It'll be really interesting to see what they do with him, and I can't wait to see if they model him after Daniel Logan, or if they would move him more toward like a Tamara Morrison look.
yeah, yeah, I would like to see Daniel Logan brought in, like to these shows. Like if Book of Boba Fett, I don't know if they're using him or not, and if they do any flashbacks or anything like that, they really should. I think he looks close enough to Tamara Morrison still, but different. And it might be in Star Wars' best interest to come up with the idea that environment matters and how you turn out a little bit too, like with clones. And the Bad Batch could be their way of getting into that explanation to some extent too. Obviously there's just straight up genetic code, but also what does environment and diet and experience, like how does that play on how they come out looking? I like that
Oh
little moment on a side note last week when Omega points out that she knows what generation um Rex is
yep.
based off. Yeah, that stuff was cool. But Tyler says, I'm a teacher, and Omega really comes off as a genuine kid. It's surprising since Hollywood usually makes children super weird, but this is very realistic and my favorite part of the show. I agree.
Oh, I totally agree. I've said it since day one. I think Omega is the best character so far in this show, because for me, like just to quickly run through the squad, Hunter has been, what we'd expect, the main, lead character of the Bad Batch. Wrecker for me has been a little hit and miss, because sometimes his character is a little over the top for my taste. And then Tech and Echo are what they are, just basically the assistants. But Omega has been, in my opinion, the character that's really developed the most. And I think that's, as that chat member said, like, she's like the most realistic. I feel like the most realistic character to like what we would know here on Earth, like a real human, I guess, versus someone in Star Wars.
Yeah, she's not condescending towards kids. Sometimes I think the shows have been, and not on purpose, but they just kind of don't really get how kids act or how they are. And it's also based off on how they think kids will react to the kid, rather than an actual good depiction who makes kids react in an appropriate way to that. And my kids don't ever groan about her. They don't ever get mad or anything like that. We all love when she says friends, though. She'll say friends almost every
Yeah.
episode, and she goes friend. I can't do it, but it's just I like it though. It sounds good, but her accent and the word friend, it makes me happy. But
Oh yeah, the voice actress that plays Omega is doing such a good job, because I definitely feel like she has the like kind of the Maori accent down, like the New Zealanders do, like Tamara Morrison does. I feel like she definitely is coming across, like putting that New Zealand accent on it, which is nice, because it kind of sticks to, like as you said, like who you're around in your environment. And she's been around all these clone troopers with that type of accent, so it's cool that they made sure to have her accent be accurate versus just a normal person without an accent.
right, yeah, she's essentially in clone culture,
Yep.
living on Camino. And they by the way, I'll cut. Dell says Michelle had some pushback on the kid. She does a great job being a realistic character. I honestly haven't seen any pushback, so I don't know what
Maybe.
the dominant like argument is or the pushback on that is. Um, Seems to work pretty good to me though. So
Yeah, I'm not.
uh,
I'm not sure. I'm just thinking about like trying to be even as critical as I could be. I'm not sure what I would really pick apart with her character, because she's flowed perfectly from the first episode to this 8th episode. She hasn't jumped the gun on any of her training. Like, episode 1, she didn't go and just start off being this amazing warrior or warrior in training. Like, it's taken time, as you said, to build up to these moments we're getting and having payoffs for.
Yeah, and it's not real, but she's getting real world experience in the show, which means a lot more than anything. Tyler says the animation took a step up in Siege of Mandalore and has stayed at that level, in my opinion. Yeah, I would agree with you. I feel like Clone Wars had like these sort of like pivotal like stepping stones, and you have like the Clone Wars movie, which is as bad as it ever was in terms of how it looked. And then you get to like season 2, they start playing with light more. Like in that season 2, episode 1, Cad Bane episodes, the first time you really see like some really good use of light. And then in season like 3.5, that's when the series starts looking really solid. And then you get to Siege of Mandalore, and that stuff. Yeah, I would agree with you there. Let's see. Dell asks, do you know what I love about Crosshair getting hurt? He's got to go back to me, limping and admit he did it to himself. Yeah, I think that's the one thing I'm going to be, in a way, the most critical about in the episode was I like Crosshair and I like the Crosshair story. He felt the most cartoony in this episode, though, ever. Like the whole time, he's like almost just one octave away from being Cobra Commander and GI Joe with his voice. You know what I mean? It's just like like constantly. It was a bit overwrought, but once again, I mean, it is still a show for young people, and I'm being really hard on it in that way. But I like that story, and I like where it's going. And two things occurred to me last night based off of that. And I was like, what if they go and I thought they were going to capture Crosshair last night and put him in that machine and take the chip out. And of course that didn't happen. But in thinking that, I was like, what if they take the chip out and he still disagrees? Because that could happen. Like he could ostensibly be of that political ideology. He could be leaning towards fascism the whole time. And because even before the chip really gets going, he does sort of look down on them a little bit. They did sort of foreshadow those kind of elements. And when I first watched the Bad Batch arc, I was kind of critical of the fact that in certain ways, at a glance, Crosshair, he really feels like Tech and it's Tech, right?
Yep, Tech.
Echo.
Tech and Echo.
Yeah, they are all kind of like nerds and sort of more intelligent. Like for a time I was like, what is the point of having all three of these guys in a way be similar? Like even like because when you get down to it, the stuff that Tech does, you could have had Echo do. You could have had Echo with his extra augmentation and what's going on have been boosted. And so, but when they put them together, they have something to talk about. And so I was like, okay with that. So a part of me wonders, if they atone, how do they make those three characters sort of like all work together? And so I have to think that they're going to have to change Crosshair in some way after this whole ordeal, if he is returned. Well, if he does atone.
Well, my question for you about that is, do you think though, Crosshair, and even a question for the chat, do you think there's a chance Crosshair does something unthinkable? Like, what if he kills Tech and then they end up removing his chip and then he has to live with it? Like, would they do that? Like, sure, like we said, the demographic for the show, but could they have something? Could they do that? Because that could like show redemption and having to like live with your like your choices in life and things like that. Would they potentially go along that line?
Yeah, Yeah, that's a really good question because the audience is going to be like, you couldn't you couldn't help it. You had a chip in your brain. So the audience will probably forgive him for whatever he does in any way. So I'm curious how they make that work. That sort of like survivor's guilt isn't the right term, but that kind of Order 66 survivor's guilt in their own way kind of thing. Because like they kind of play with it for a second with Wrecker. I didn't know what I was doing, and then they're
Yeah.
like, okay, and so you see that you're like, you don't hold that against him. You go, yeah, he couldn't help it. He had a chip in his brain. So but that could go into interesting places, especially if they do hold it against him.
Yeah.
If
Well,
it's like it takes a big person to forgive, and in that kind of instance, they kind of overcame the stuff, and he hasn't. And so they could technically look down on him. You're not wrong there. I mean, it could go that way in terms of story beats if they want to.
well, I think that is. I really am leaning toward. I think that could be the way we go, because I think there's been foreshadowing since day one about it. Because Omega literally is telling Crosshair, like, I know it's not your fault, blah blah blah. Like, you know, I think her foreshadowing is going to potentially eventually lead to maybe him doing something bad or whatever. And then, like you said, maybe the main, maybe the guys, they're like, no, we don't want Crosshair back. He's done this or that. And then, Omega is going to be the voice of reason, like, it wasn't his fault. He's a good guy, blah, blah, blah. Like, I
Yeah.
think there's a really decent chance we get something like that in the show at some point.
Yeah, because she did kind of see them to build on that when the series started. She kind of sees them as rock stars of the clones.
Yep.
Like she knows all of their names, and so she's going to believe in him probably more than anybody else in the show for that reason alone. Um, that all of that aside, I do wonder too, though, if they may go a different route with it, where he will he overcome his programming through sheer will and go Hulkamaniac and then do the right thing? Because like whatever it is, however it happens, it has to be a big moment. Because if it's just like Wrecker picks him up and throws him into the machine, and he's all, "Oh no,
Yeah.
I'm better. I'm all better now." Then it's gonna be like, well, that was a lot of stuff for not a very big payoff. And
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's also a chance maybe Crosshair ends up doing something heroic and sacrificing himself to like save Omega or whoever it may be, and maybe he gets his redemption arc that way. But then
yeah,
again, that falls on the whole thing, like, in Star Wars, how many redemption arcs have we had where the character dies and doesn't really live with like the consequences?
yeah, and he's a weird one though, because like the other ones, like Anakin made his choices. You make your
Yep.
bed, now you're gonna lie in it. Crosshair didn't really make this bed. This was put into his head as a baby. And in terms of science fiction, when you get down into certain nefarious political ideologies that we have in the world, a lot of people are born into them with that chip in their head against their will, and then they are still responsible for what they do as grown-ups with it. And so I don't know if the show will want to get that heavy-handed, but that is in terms of the science fiction, or if it was a novel, that is a really good analogy that could be dealt with and made with that character. But it is still a younger person's show. He's really not responsible for it. He literally does have a chip in his brain that is making him insane. It would be a little bit like holding somebody's actions against them when they have a psychotic break because of medication or something like that.
Yep.
It's really not in his control. But I hope it's wrapped up in season 1, whichever way it goes. I hope
Oh
that
yeah.
this is the season 1 storyline, and I hope that it plays out in this season. And if he becomes the series bad guy forever, then fine. But I hope it's firmly cemented. And if it comes back to the flock, if you will, I hope it's also cemented.
Oh, for sure. I don't want to see, let's say this show goes on for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
I don't want this to get drug out with Crosshair over potentially like 48 episodes. And then in episode 47, he decides to turn good. I don't know. To me, that would be, I don't know, it would be a waste of a villain just because to me, also it's like you don't have to turn every villain, every villain doesn't have to turn and be good. Like they can just stay and be, they can fall to the dark side and not come back. And I don't want to see his character get drug out like that over 3 seasons. But I think that's where, you have a potential of maybe, as you said, he may be the season 1 villain. They may wrap it however they do it. And then maybe season 2, we fall into more of the bounty hunter stuff with Fennec Shan or Boba or Morcad Bane or Bosk or whoever it may be, potential bounty hunters coming up in this show. Maybe we get more of those type of storylines. And then, of course, the typical like Imperial stuff. But I think if I had to bet, I would say this villain storyline with Crosshair will probably be wrapped by the end of this season.
Yeah, I think that would be wise, and I think you're right. And the show is almost the A-Team, the old show. I don't know if you ever watched the A-Team, but the A-Team was huge in the 80s, and it's pretty much that. I mean, Wrecker's pretty much B.A. Baracus. They're all kind of, it's a little bit of 80s tropes and with the A-Team. And those kinds of stories are just like, doing jobs, helping people, This one has a really good Star Wars backdrop to hang that premise on. And so as the story moves on, it's like the two big stories they're telling are, how do we get to stormtroopers? That's really clear. That's where it's going. I mean, we're seeing them more than, and when you see them next to the clones and they're all voiced by D. Bradley Baker, and then you hear the ones who aren't, it really does go like, oh, what is that? Like that feels weird. It does. It definitely like it pops. And so I'm glad that they're telling that story. And I'd have to imagine that's going to be finished this season as well. And then we're going to start to see what happens to those clones who did horrible things. And the one thing I will say, though, is that I'm curious if the whole chip thing, why would they ever like wasn't the official story we got in maybe A New Dawn that clones sort of retired and some became teachers of stormtroopers?
I think that was in A New Dawn.
I think so too.
I'm pretty sure.
Why in a way like we could see the political side of things right now where they're wanting to get the stormtrooper program going, and you see the people wanting to push that, and basically why dominate a whole population when you can dominate and make them work for you doing the same thing at the same time. And so you have that element going on. But with as evil and programmed as the clones are in this series right now, I'm almost wondering if something's going to happen. Are they going to come up with like a mass disruption device, sort of like a EMP or whatever, is it EMP, is that the word, kind of thing that affects the chip, a signal that they can boost that makes them go, what is going on? Like I think they have to almost break it. And I'm curious if they're going to, if that's going to be a story that we get here in the future too, because at the moment it doesn't make any sense to throw the clones away. You would still use them in stormtroopers until they were phased out and dead. And maybe that's what's going to happen, but they're just so easily evil. It doesn't kind of add up to me.
Oh yeah. Well, that's my, what I was going to ask is, what do you think the Kaminoans' plan is? Do you think maybe the Kaminoans get mad at the Empire and they're basically like, screw you guys, we're gonna basically malfunction all these chips on these clone troopers? Because obviously there's some tension going on between the Kaminoans and Admiral Rampart that's there. So it makes me wonder if that could be potentially the plan the Kaminoans want, or maybe the Kaminoans want Omega because they're going to make their own Bad Batch armies or whatever to maybe go up against, some stormtroopers.
Right.
Like I think that's a point of this series that, not a lot of people really talked about is what in the world are the Kaminoans doing in the background of this show that we haven't seen yet?
Yeah, it seems like to me like Tanway doesn't seem to really realize that the Kaminoans aren't a free enterprise anymore. That this isn't the capitalism under the Republic. They kind of seem like they're like, well, okay, we're going to have to play this, but we're still going to be able to make things work how we work. Like they don't seem like they've hit the point of truly accepting how screwed they are. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like that they are essentially ostensibly slaves of the empire at this point, just in a much nicer place than some Wookiees and some spice mines or something like that. And we're going to I think you probably hit the nail on the head there. They're probably going to be the ones who pull the plug when the empire doesn't pay its bills or something like that.
Yep.
You know,
Well,
that's
well,
going to be when
an,
it starts to go in south.
another question even for that is, okay, say the Kaminoans pull the plug, the Empire would, I mean, presumably wipe them out just because, we don't really see them in like future things. And it makes me wonder, could they pull the plug? Could the Empire, I don't know, God forbid, send in Darth Vader and take everybody out? But then why in Mando season 1, why is Dr. Pershing wearing a Kaminoan suit? And up to this point, other than the clone troopers, I don't think any humans are working for the Kaminoans. I think it's like their own species. The actual Kaminoan species are the only people working for the Kaminoans. Like, why is Dr. Pershing a human, wearing Kaminoan clothing? Like, I mean, sure, he could be just an Imperial officer, like stationed there going, oh, yeah, I'm going to throw on these new clothes or something. But, why would he presumably be, heading up
Yeah.
this project?
Yeah, yeah, you could take it you could take it a few different ways. I mean, I think you're right. I think that it nepotism and people put into places where they maybe shouldn't be, and all kinds of things like that, where people just to make money and become aristocratic in that system. But on the flip side of that, Pershing could be a genius and the exception, and they hired him. They could also take it that way, but I
Yep.
think you're right. I don't think the friction that we see says that the Kaminoans are a part of the formal empire. I don't think Tarkin and any of the Imperials who've shown up have really been very respectful or really caring about what they want or how they're treated. And they keep having to say, "Hey, that's our property. Hey, that's our stuff," and the Empire keeps going, "We don't care. That's your problem, homie." Like pretty much every episode that we see those two together. So yeah, it's definitely gonna probably end up with that obviously getting seized and then changed around. But it's still you would still think that there would have to be like something where the Bad Batch and the Kaminoans, as you suggested, um, break the idea of using their clones, because it
Yep.
still doesn't make sense to not use them. That's one of the things. I mean, but then again, I might be overthinking it. It's a space movie, and maybe they just don't use it because Attack of the Clones was made 22 years after or whatever it was, so a New Hope.
Yeah.
So Dale says,
Yeah.
of course he'll have Tobias Beckett with him because he's not old enough to drive yet. He owes Arsing money, so of course she'll be on their trail. That would be cool. That would be there's like a lot of stuff that a lot of the world building in Solo that we haven't seen pay off anywhere else, which is I think in a way has been or not too many places yet. And I think that's been a good thing for them making more Solo content specifically for the screen. But as
Yep.
time goes on, I think, and if it doesn't happen, I think we'll start to see that those kind of things happen more and more. You know,
Well, see,
Dell
that's
says,
the
yeah,
oh, I was gonna say that's the thing with the whole topic of like the solo content, it's Star Wars put themselves, in my opinion, in a little bit of a tough spot right now.
Okay.
And it's just because I'm not sure if you've had a chance to check out the War of the Bounty Hunter comic line yet.
I know I need to read that one. I haven't
in the
read
comic.
it.
Yep, and in the comic. So long story short, between Empire and Return of the Jedi, Kira ends up taking possession of Han and Carbonite, and she basically alludes in that comic that she hasn't seen Han in like it basically is almost sounding like she hasn't seen him since the Solo movie. So,
Okay.
It makes it hard because it's like if you want to like really wholeheartedly stick to canon, that means you basically just slam the door shut on anything up until Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder, could we potentially downstream get something with Kira and Han and Book of Boba or Mando or whatever? Because I mean, as long as Kira makes it out of these comics alive, I think there's a chance for it. But Star Wars put themselves in kind of a tough corner right now. Just the way they wrote her lines in that comic.
Yeah, that definitely is telling. If that was approved, which it obviously was because it was published, then that says they do not intend on doing anything with her or that character, and that's too bad. I will say it is too bad. You'll see a lot of times you'll see people on the internet with like make Solo 2 happen kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I'm like number one, if they made Solo 2, fantastic. Like I'm for it, but I really don't care if it's Solo 2 as much as it's the things created in Solo showing up places.
Yep.
Like you know what I mean? If you give us an Enfys Nest television series or story or film, rad. You know what I mean? If you want to tell that, I don't necessarily need the Han Solo stuff, but if you want to do more Han Solo stuff, I wouldn't be mad either.
Yep.
I look back on that show right now and I just think all the time, I'm like, man, had they made Solo a Disney Plus series, Solo was great, but it would have been so much better as a Disney Plus series, and it would still be going right now. That's what's painful to me anyway.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the good thing is, like I said, the comic that came out is a little bit, kind of handcuffs you when it comes to Solo. But the good thing with it is they're basically having Kira bring back the Crimson Dawn, so there is a potential chance for something in that realm to happen at some point, as long as she makes it out of the comics. The Crimson Dawn is presumably getting built back up, so maybe we're going to get something at some point. Or, I'm not sure if you've heard one way or the other. I know on StarWars.com they're not very specific, but is the Lando series live action? Because, maybe we'll get Han and Kira in that show.
That is the question. And with there haven't been too much movement on it, it isn't super clear to me. I wonder that too. And to make matters even worse, I talked to people who write for the trades who think one way or the other. And so sometimes that's just like kind of a good tip off. They know everybody and they're hearing it's a live action thing. Yeah. And they were not clear in that press release about that at all. And but Kira and Lando could obviously interact, and if they were to go with Vet and move that on, and then move Kira into that being one of the people he's warring with, or something like that, that could potentially be an interesting way to take it, because they both have this mutual problem with Solo.
Yeah,
if they were to ever bring that in,
I think there's a decent chance for it. Have you had a chance to see Tamara Morrison's quote from last week about the Book of Boba?
No, what did he say?
So basically, Tamara Morrison said, I'll send you it after the show, but he was saying that there's going to be flashbacks in this show. So it makes me wonder, could this be Star Wars' opportunity to flashback to the time between Empire and Jedi? And then, there's your entrance to Emilia Clarke being in the Star Wars, when she's taking Han and Carbonite. Could they potentially like live action the War of the Bounty Hunters comic
Right.
in a flashback. So
That would be cool. I mean,
yep.
yeah. So it is. So it's probably going to be sort of, in a weird way, the Boba show is going to be an anthology series of Boba Fett's life or his stories.
Yep. Well, my take on the show, especially with, like I said, Tamaro's comments, I feel like if anybody has ever seen the CW shows, one of my favorite shows on the CW network is The Green Arrow, or well, when that was on, anyways. But they successfully made that show have flashbacks basically the entire run of the series. So basically, for that show, you had the main, like, a storyline that's happening in the present. And then for the first season, for example, it was 5 years ago when the Green Arrow was stranded on this deserted island, and they had these two storylines concurrently running, and eventually they finally crossed, like, in the future. So, we might potentially have a situation where, maybe we're going to have a couple, a few flashbacks and things, like, a flashback type of story going on.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, if it's about Boba cementing where he's at, and then you were to show where he's been to make it there. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and it would be a shame if the Book of Boba Fett was just straight up like only action set, just really straightforward without much inspiration. And that's like the only thing that like, I have a buddy of mine, Chris. He's always like, "You don't seem too jazzed about Boba. Like, is it gonna suck? Are you hearing it's gonna suck?" And I'm not. I'm just like, so little has been come out on that one, and it's been so tight on it that it's like kind of like, this is nothing to get excited about, because other than the fact that it's coming. So, and we got that teaser at the end of Mando, which was the most excited as you can get outside of another trailer, or a trailer for the series. Yep. So,
I think the biggest. I was just going to say, I think the biggest thing with Boba, I mean, I've said it years ago, was if you're ever going to bring him back into live action, the number one thing you have to do is bring Tamara Morrison in. I think that's like the biggest shining spot of the show for me in general, is Tamara Morrison playing him.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, it's gonna, it plays through from Attack of the Clones through the original trilogy now into the post Return of the Jedi era, like with Tamara Morrison. It streamlines it in such a way. And I've always wanted this show to happen, or a movie to happen, and I always felt like Boba Fett was a good character, but I always felt like he never was actualized. Daniel Logan did a great job as him as a child, but didn't get to play him in Revenge of the Sith, so it didn't really move too much beyond that. And then Clone Wars set up stuff for him, but even then he hasn't become the guy like in the suit yet. So it's like on screen, he's so far really been mostly a comic book character when you get down to it. Like, that's where you mostly see him, is in toys and comics. And not knocking that stuff, but the live action character of Boba Fett needs to be worked on, and I'm glad that's happening, and it's going to be defined. I'm curious if people are going to be happy with it, though, or if it's going to, because is it going to mess with people's, he was such a blank slate. You could put so much on him for years about what you thought he was going to be or what he should be. And so they're going to have to really give him, like, Mando did a good job of making him badass. He was really badass in that. But the series is going to have to do it again and again and again. And but I'm glad we got Robert Rodriguez on that, because if there's somebody you can probably count on for that kind of stuff, it's him.
For sure. He said, Boba, he said in that behind the scenes documentary, when you have Boba, he's a legend, so he has to act like a legend. So, that's why they made him so badass in that episode. But, as you said, you're going to have to hold that standard for however long the show runs. I mean, because, like, sure, like, I feel like they have a chance of potentially getting backlash, because if you show too many weak points of Boba Fett, like if you have him down and out and sad and all kinds of stuff, then that starts chinking in, like, the mythos of Boba Fett that's been built up for the past 40 some years.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. It would he has to be just super on the entire time until people get comfortable with
Yep.
seeing him on screen, and then they could show more humanity there, and they could play with that more. But I mean, I was just thinking right now about Robert Rodriguez when he made with Quentin Tarantino when they made From Dusk Till Dawn. I think as a teenager, that was the biggest action movie dopamine high I ever had, from just the pure violence in it, and it was ridiculous and over the top, but that was a really good time, and I would like to see that level, that From Dusk Till Dawn desperado amount of action. Do we know, is Robert Rodriguez directing all of them, or just kicking it off and supervising it?
See, it's from what I've read. I really dug into this show, and from what I've read and seen, anyways, it's basically unclear. Like, we know Favreau's working on it, we know Rodriguez is working on it, and we don't really know who's doing what exactly. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I mean, it makes me wonder if the other directors are Favreau and Filoni, if there are other directors, and Robert Rodriguez is doing, a few of them, and that's why we haven't really heard too much, and that's why it's so hard to figure out who is directing it, if there's anybody beyond him. But so far, that whole thing is just working out really well. So I'm not cynical about it.
Oh yeah, I
So
think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Tyler suggests Crosshair with the Winter Soldier type arc. Yeah, I think that's probably what we're getting. I think that probably nails it. The Van Fam says Cad Bane being in today's Bad Batch leads me to think he'll be in Boba. Would love to see him in live action, him and Hondo. Yeah, I was surprised we haven't seen Hondo yet. When I love Sid. Sid's the name, right? Sid.
Sid. Yep.
Yeah.
Sid.
And I love Sid, but at first I was like, I am surprised they didn't use Hondo for this. But yeah, Sid's great, and I think Hondo. Surprised we haven't seen him yet. I'm surprised we haven't seen him in live action. So there's a lot of opportunities there for people like Cad Bane and him to show up in a Boba series and give him because that's the other thing with him, is he's so badass. You want to give him a bunch of rapscallions who are at his level, or else he will seem, if he seems too much like a superhero, he's never vulnerable. And he also, and Shannik is like the opposite. It's like the Boba, but the more quiet assassin version. Whereas, as we see, he has a flamethrower and he's shooting rockets at stuff. So
I love that whole sequence was genius. Like, as soon as that thermal detonator drops in and Boba Fett pops in, like, that whole sequence was so just, that's everything we wanted to see Boba Fett do. Like, it's like, and I feel like Robert Rodriguez and everybody involved, they were like, okay, let's figure out the checklist of what fans have wanted for the past 40 years on screen from Boba, and let's just do it in a montage style. And that's pretty much what it was. Mm-hmm. And my thing with Boba is, I love how, to this point, it's really been just a mystery or legacy or whatever you want to call it. But, now we actually get to see him being such a badass. And one of my biggest things, probably my most favorite thing about that entire episode, sure, the action was amazing and everything about it was great. But my favorite part, I've said it since day one, is Boba's introduction to Din. He literally is basically, saying, hey, I want my armor back. And Din's like, it's not happening. And I love Boba literally. His intro to us as, sure, we all know Boba, but his reintroduction to us is like, oh yeah, my friend who's a sniper is getting ready to blow Grogu right off the ridge over there. Like that shows how ruthless Boba is still. And this cute little character we've loved, and it's Boba's like, well, we're ready to just take him out. And I just really love that part because it really brought home the point. He's still a ruthless bounty hunter.
Yeah, when I saw that moment for the first time, I remember thinking Boba Fett would kill Kermit the Frog from Muppet Babies.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
that's what it came down to, is he would do it, man. He would do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how many months we got? What, about 6 months to go until we get that series rolling, right?
Well, we don't know exactly. It says December, but does that mean December 20? Does it mean Christmas Day, or does it mean the first like Friday or Wednesday of December? Because
No, yeah.
presumably all the Disney shows are moving to Wednesdays. So will it be like the first Wednesday of December, or is it going to be like Mando when they said it was coming out in November and it was like the last weekend in November or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, is it going to be something like that where it'll be, start your Christmas week by watching the first episode of Book of Boba? Like, is it going to be something like that? So I'm not sure exactly. Like, we haven't really heard anything, and I don't know. I mean,
we haven't seen any merch coming out or merch leaks yet, I don't think either, right?
the only leak related to anything with that season is Ming Na Wen, who plays Fennec Shan. She posted on her Twitter, so it's not even like, I mean, I think the tweet's even still up, but she posted that it was like a sticker thing or whatever from from like the crew, basically saying things were done. And one of the stickers that she posted said Book of Boba Fett season 1. So, that kind of, it doesn't confirm there's a season 2, but it basically is implying there's more than one season.
Right.
Like that's the only like leak I've really seen on anything really for sure from that show, is that potentially. And then, there's been rumblings like about Bosk being in the series. But those are like the main things.
Yeah. Yeah. And Bosk should be dead. But at the same time, I mean, the rule, we didn't see him die on screen. Doesn't mean it happened.
Yeah.
Bosk could have went to go use the bathroom, was watching his big O fin flippers, whatever he has for hands, and then it blew up, and then he was just like, oh, good thing I was in here. It's safe in here. Bosk is okay. No. But yeah, I on one hand, like that's what sucks, is like it would be great to see Dengar and all of those kind of characters like extrapolated upon and who should be dead, but I think they could get away with it if they want to. I don't think anybody's going to be mad if it turns out, yeah, I didn't care to see Solo die. I had business to take care of, so I left.
Yeah. Well, the only bounty hunter that is for sure like dead out of that whole crew is Forlom from The Empire Strikes Back, because in the War of the Bounty Hunters, Boba literally cuts off Forlom's head like the robot. So like that's the only one that's like definitively like dead. The other ones, one of my buddies, I always joke to him, I'm like, oh, Mace Windu's gonna come back someday, just because with Star Wars, look at how many character deaths we've had that have been basically fake deaths. I mean, Darth Maul, you have Boba Fett, you have, I mean, the biggest one, the Emperor literally blew up in the Death Star explosion. So, you have all these type of things. So I just think, characters like Bosk or other characters we didn't really specifically see, like, it's the whole saying, we didn't see the body, so there's a chance.
Yeah. If you didn't see the body, you didn't see the actual death, then it's completely still on the table. Did you know with Forlom, as I call him, or 4LOM, His name is either For Love of Money or For Love or Money. And
Oh, I did
they,
not know that.
yeah, that's what it means, but nobody remembers which one it is. When
Huh.
they came up with it, it was For Love of Money or For Love or Money. And they don't know. And the action figures too, Zuckus and Forlom had the wrong names for a time. And the Kenner line, they messed that up
Hmm.
pretty bad. But
That's interesting. I did not know that. That's a cool little fact.
um, Dell says that Uncle Owen is dead. I think Dell sounds like a crazy person right now. Uncle Owen's not dead. At the end of the Kenobi series, it's going to be like 30 years later, and you're going to see like the hand just come up out of the thing, and you're going to hear Brew, and you're like, what? Zombie Uncle Owen. Yeah, I always wanted to see that there was that ILM book with all the ILM people who created their like kind of Star Wars story one-offs, with the one where Maul originally came back with the legs, and Uncle Owen's out there with the rifle shooting at him. Because there were lines in the original scripts for Star Wars where Biggs was like, "Your uncle could hold off all the Tuskens with a gun," like, something like that. And so seeing that show up and against Maul, like, man, that would have been really cool to have seen something like that happen. But
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Uncle Owen, I can't wait to see him back in the Kenobi series. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I'm glad that they weren't. Joel Edgerton didn't have kind words to say about the Star Wars movies that he was in, and it's like, so what? Like, it was his opinion, and I'm glad that they seem to be at that place with it too. But I was always a little bit worried. I was like, man, because if it was the George Lucas era, we may not have ever seen him again. Like Peter Serafinowicz, the guy who did Maul's voice originally, I don't think we'll ever see him anywhere near that stuff after bad mouthing the films.
See, and that's my thing with Star Wars. Like, I feel like there's a fine line between being like a good corporate employee, like basically advertising for your company you work for, but then also, being critical. Like, I guess to me, is there a rule that like you have to love like the projects you're working in? Like, of course, you want to love and enjoy what you're doing as an actor and make money and things like that. But at the end of the day, that is their job. Like, their job is to get on screen, read lines, advertise the movie, and keep it moving. Like, is there a line or is there a rule that says like they can't also basically be a critic and have their own opinion of a film? And my thing with that, I've always been under the impression of like, I don't care who it is, like, if you have a very talented person. Well, let's stay on Christopher Nolan, for example. I'm not sure his views on Star Wars at all. I haven't really dove into that. But let's say Christopher Nolan completely doesn't like Star Wars. Mm-hmm. But let's say they go and hire him and he does an amazing Star Wars movie. Will we care that he doesn't like Star Wars? I mean, me personally, I wouldn't care just because it's another great Star Wars movie. Like, as long as like an actor or a director or a producer, their potential critiques of Star Wars doesn't bleed into what they're working on, I don't have too much of a problem with it. Like with Joel Edgerton, for example, like, as long as he doesn't like mail in his performance, I don't care what his opinions are,
Yeah. Well, it's also like the same thing with when Gary Whitta came on, they leaked all this stuff from him on message boards, talking all kinds of crap on Star Wars and belittling George Lucas and stuff like that. And it's like, it's a bummer. It's like, well, oh, that sucks. At the same time, like, my take was, well, if this guy hates it, now he has to put his money where his mouth is. Like, if this guy is critical of it, and now he's going to be writing it, he has to rock it. I only saw it honestly as a good thing, because you can't go and be hypercritical and then do a poor job or get it wrong, because then it's just like, well, there you have it. But it doesn't really matter. Like, Alec Guinness doesn't like Star Wars, never liked it.
I love that. That's what I was going to say. if you guys haven't seen it already, look up the clip on YouTube from Alec Guinness, however long ago it was. He's telling a story where a kid was asking for his autograph, and he said, "I'll give you my autograph as long as you promise to never watch this movie ever again." Like, he didn't like Star Wars at all. And, he was in it. Like, and it's hilarious hearing an actor, especially, one of the main characters of the original trilogy, or one of the most iconic characters at that, say that. And it's just like, it's jarring. It's jarring, but he still put in an amazing performance. I guess my take on it too is like, on the total flip side of it, we don't want hardcore fans who are not like qualified to make the movies either. Like I mean, like take you and me, for example, Jason. If Star Wars comes to us and they're like, "Hey, you guys are hardcore fans. Do you want to do a trilogy?" Of course, we would say yes. I'll do it.
Don't do Ben's. It won't be as good as mine.
Yeah. Don't expect high quality. Don't expect high quality. Like, this isn't going to be, a Spielberg masterpiece movie. Like, and I think there's a fine line between being a hardcore fan and being an employee that works for Star Wars that can be a little bit critical as well.
Well, remember when Shia LaBeouf said bad things about Indiana Jones 4?
Yep.
I'm probably misquoting him, but I think he said, "What a shithead," or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, you don't, when you start a project, it's like not like anybody intends to make something that doesn't connect or isn't great. And there's nothing wrong with sharing your opinion, but it is a little bit like when you've worked on it. I do think it's a little bit like, and with the Uncle Owen, in that instance, I don't think he had done too much at the time when he said that. And I think that might have just been him not being completely as media savvy as he could have been.
For sure. Well,
I could be wrong though.
Look at JJ, for example. JJ's, I mean, a lot of instances he's been kind of openly against the prequel. Like, he's not a fan of the prequels of Star Wars, but still, for the most part, I really enjoyed The Force Awakens, and I think he did really well with it. Like, he's a talented filmmaker. Just because, say, he's not a fan of certain parts of Star Wars doesn't mean he's not qualified to make a really good movie.
Yeah. No, without a doubt. I mean, the like when we were in that era, the only the concern that I had was that they would crush some of the themes or some of the things that actually make it what it is, and they didn't do that. That never happened. And so with that in mind, you always, I think, have to accept now that they're going to be making these things forever. There's a bajillion stories that can be told, and so all of those various voices and actors and stuff like that, they all have a chance. Like, I remember when they were doing the Comic-Con premiere for Star Wars Rebels. I went to it, so I didn't attend the panel that was going on at the moment because I was actually waiting in that long ass line to see it. And someone had asked, like, Tia Sakar, I think, if she was a big Star Wars fan, and they didn't like the answer.
Yep.
And it was just
I remember hearing about that.
It's like, do you think Peter Cushing was sitting there watching Empire Strikes Back day one going, "Here we are, I'm the biggest Star Wars fan of all time"? It's like, no, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that they can act, because there's been a lot of people who are huge Star Wars fans in Star Wars who couldn't act. It doesn't mean anything. Well, it's irrelevant.
Well, I mean, look, you talk about Peter Cushing, Alec Guinness, whoever. One of our biggest ones, Harrison Ford, has been really, like, openly not the biggest Star Wars fan. And I mean, he's our beloved Han Solo. I mean, so there's plenty of examples of it, and it's just
And I think he's just burned about talking about it. Like, he's like, I made a movie last time in 1983, and then for the next 30 years he was asked about it every day.
Or asking, what do you think Han Solo did after this? Like, he doesn't care. Like, I mean, the only people, I feel like, in my opinion, when it comes to asking, like, an actor or something like that, ask people who are, like, openly into Star Wars like Mark Hamill, for example. He's a really good example. Right. He's been like the poster boy for Star Wars since Return of the Jedi, especially during like the era between Return of the Jedi and then Phantom Menace. Like Mark Hamill was like carrying a lot of that stuff. Like, so the thing is with him, he's really big into Star Wars. He's big into, you know, he's openly talking about his like nerdiness, being into comics and things like that.
Right.
And that's great. So he's, you know, he's an actor, you know, that you could talk to about stuff like that. But I guarantee you, if I would have a 5-minute sit down with Harrison Ford, I wouldn't be trying to ask him Han Solo theories. Like,
no,
it just would be a waste.
He's gonna want to hear about your secret margarita mix or something like that. He's gonna want to
piloting.
yeah, exactly. And Mark Hamill, what I think gets him in trouble, but also makes him endearing at the same time, is that he's a dweeb just like us. If he hadn't made it in acting, he would definitely have a Godzilla podcast or something. You could just tell. You know, he just has that vibe about him. So it's a funny world that we live in, because, and when I say that funny world we live in, I mean the Star Wars world, because we have these like black and white sort of 2D stories that are really easy to understand and really fun. But then you see that same culture try to take apart real life and what people mean and their intentions, and it's so off most of the time. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It plays into such a, and it's like, because we have such a wide array of people and everything. So yeah, looking forward to next week though, because obviously we're gonna have Cad Bane back.
Bane for sure.
Back next week. He has to.
I think this might be an old-fashioned Clone Wars 2 or 3 or 4 part thing with Cad Bane. I think there's a decent chance it's going to be something like old-fashioned Clone Wars. We're going to get a 2 to 4 part little arc, and then Cad Bane is going to end up going about his merry way, you know, because he's going to leave for something, or he's going to get outsmarted by the Bad Batch, or maybe, I don't know, maybe Omega somehow outsmarts him.
Maybe he does his job successfully, returns her.
Yeah,
and then they have to get her out, and yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a chance of that too, because I mean, look at even recently, Star Wars has had a precedence for that. You know, look at the finale for Mando. Boba, you know, helps the crew out, and then he was out of there. So maybe Cad Bane goes, delivers Omega, and is like, I got my payday and I'm gone.
Going to live my best Star Wars life.
Yep.
Maybe he gets Toto 360 a new leg. I don't know. Yep. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he has crutches for the rest of his life. We don't know. But yeah, I am just looking forward to, as a Star Wars fan, getting through this year, getting to Boba Fett, because we get to Boba Fett, and like next year is going to be like the best Star Wars year. Like all of the live action television stuff is just going to start just kind of hitting, and very consistently after that. And I can't wait. Side note, I'm going to put this at the back end because we should probably wrap it up pretty soon. We've been going for about an hour and a half now. I was talking to a source of mine. They thought that this whole Rangers of the Republic business was comedy. They said that it really it isn't done. It isn't over. It's never even really begun. So a lot of the stuff that's been going around about Rangers of the Republic, I don't know what's been going on. If you didn't see it on the site, I didn't care enough to like read into it and report it. But I know that things have gone around. It doesn't sound like it's dead to me. For what it's worth. I don't have multiple sources on that at this point, but the source I do have, it's no joke. I take them pretty seriously. So,
well, that's good to know, because no matter what people's feelings were on the show in general, like I really just didn't know what to expect from it because we really didn't get too much information. But my thing with that show is it's more Star Wars content at the end of the day. Like, give me all the different live action or animated shows or whatever. I'm a Star Wars fan. I always joke around about it with some of my other co-hosts. We could get a movie, the Ewok adventure hunting Jawa movie, and we'll all be there opening night. Like, we're Star Wars fans. Like, we'll be there, we'll watch it, and to me, it's just more content.
Yeah.
And to explore the Mando. I've been kind of just saying like the Mando timeline or the Mando era, but it's just more content to explore like the whole Mando era of Star Wars.
For sure. I mean, and it doesn't, from the sound of things, nothing is hinging on one person. That's always, I think, the thing to remember with Star Wars, and with the fact that you could recast, and it doesn't matter who it is. Star Wars is bigger than anybody and anything. Like, no one person, not even George Lucas. I mean, I would have thought that at one point, but no. I mean, it's living without him now. And if somebody dies, somebody quits, somebody's recast, the show must go on, and it simply will. And so I have to think that that series, I think, was announced extra early, just to fluff out the investors' like excitement, and because they knew it would start leaking out eventually anyway. So I think they were just jumping the gun on it. Because look at, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was just like, look at Jon Favreau is supposed to be writing it, and it's like, how do you when did you expect Jon Favreau to write that?
Yeah,
but I mean, Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian, the next season of Mandalorian, like it hasn't come up yet.
So and I'm guessing, and I'm guessing, even though Filoni's doing most of Ahsoka, I'm guessing Favreau's going to kind of sprinkle in some things here and there. Like he's going to help out, or Favreau's going to be very busy for the foreseeable future. So, like, realistically, real world wise, it just makes sense that it's gotten pushed back a little bit. And, as you said, Star Wars is bigger than one character, one actor, whoever it may be. Like, for example, I'm a massive sports fan, but like all the sports, commentators talk about, there's no one player bigger than the league. Look, Michael Jordan retired, the NBA continued. Whoever retired from the NFL continued. Star Wars will go on without certain actors or characters or things like that. So that's why, for me, I'm completely fine with recasting characters. Like, that was one of my biggest critiques. I mean, and this could open a whole other can of worms, but one of my biggest critiques of the Rise of Skywalker and the whole process of that was, I honestly thought they should have recast Carrie Fisher to flesh out that character's story better than, in my opinion, what we got. They should have recasted another credible actress to flesh out the character, deservedly so. Because, I feel like we live in a day and age where, on social media, on especially Twitter, everyone views the character or the real life person as the character of the show. So like no one can separate the two nowadays. And, everybody's like, this character is that person and that person's this character, and they cannot be separate. And it just drives me crazy because I think we forget the part that these characters are fictional characters, and they're not just X actor or whoever it may be. I mean, look how many times they've recasted Batman, and I love all the different versions of Batman. Ben Affleck's good, Christian Bale's good. In my opinion, I love Michael Keaton the most. I think he's great, but I still like all of them to a degree. Or same with Superman or James. Look at James Bond. James Bond is is very iconic, and they've recasted him however many times. So I
Right.
think people forget, like, when it comes to Star Wars, you can recast. Recasting is not a bad thing. Like, the actor does not own that role. We've all talked about. I mean, I'm sure you've seen people talking about it on Twitter and social media. I would love to see Sebastian Stan play a young Luke Skywalker. That
I'm
would
right there
be,
with you. I'm one of
yeah,
them.
and yep, yeah, same here. So in my opinion, he would be a perfect Luke Skywalker. And again, Mark Hamill doesn't own that role. Sebastian Stan could come in potentially and play it better for all we know. Like, we don't know.
Yeah, if you're gonna do a 60-year-old Luke Skywalker story, then you get Mark Hamill. And
Yeah,
if you can't, if you're not doing that, you're doing something else. Find the right person, because the character is bigger than any one actor for sure.
yep,
Yeah, and I agree with you about the Princess Leia stuff. I don't think that was the way to do it in 9. I think they were in a hard place, or General Leia,
yep,
I should say, at that point. They were in a hard place for sure, and they didn't know what to do. So it's like I don't know if I would rather have it been recast, or if there just had been a better explanation. You know what I mean? If they
yeah,
had just done something else, if she had given herself up to the Force and for some greater reason, something like that. I don't know, but it would
yeah,
have it would have yeah, it would have worked better than what we had, which was a little bit weird. But
yep.
I got kids looking at me right now. It is about 100 degrees here right now, and they want to go swimming. So we are going to have to wrap this up. Ben, whenever you feel like coming back on, I had a great time talking with you today. I'd love to have you back on. And
Oh yeah,
everybody,
I'd be more than happy to hop on. I mean, I'm usually free in this time slot almost every day, so I can hop on almost daily or whenever you would like.
I will be hitting you up, man. I will be hitting you up. Where
Sounds
where
good.
can people find you? Listen to your show.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Real Ben Maynard, and you can find our live Star Wars show called The Outer Rim Transmission. It's on YouTube and it's on every podcasting platform on Monday mornings.
Nice. Send me the link to the YouTube, and I'll make sure to get it in there into this description, so that way people could just go check it out right away. And
Okay,
yeah,
awesome.
and
Thanks.
thanks to everybody in the chat today. I feel like we ignored you a little bit because we were having our conversation, but we will definitely not ignore you next time. And if you have any questions, I had one question I meant to get to that was Twittered to me, but I forgot to do it. Sorry, Mr. Del Rio. I will get to that next time.
Yeah, we
And
can
we
get to that
will,
on Monday or Tuesday.
yeah, we will hit it up. And so everybody, have a good night, good weekend. Have fun, watch Star Wars, and I'll talk to you guys all next time, probably Monday.
See ya.